April 17th, 1964, a car was unveiled in New York, and it instantly swept the nation. On paper, it is a Mustang, the promise of speed, freedom, rebellion. But hidden under its sleek skin lies the recycled skeleton of a cheap Falcon, and a price tag of $2,368 hides a far bigger bill. How did Ford convince an entire generation to buy an illusion, not a revolution? The answer begins here. In the summer of 1962, inside Ford's Dearborn headquarters, a new project took shape called T5. The man pushing hardest was Lee Iacocca, the ambitious vice president of Ford's car and truck divisions. Iacocca saw a gap in the market. A restless generation of young Americans, flush with post-war optimism, were priced out of the sports cars they craved. He argued Ford had to move fast, or risk losing an entire wave of buyers to rivals. Every week, he pressed his case at executive reviews, describing a car that would look like $1 million but cost less than $3,000. He called it the perfect car at the perfect time. He promised it would bring new faces, especially young ones, into Ford showrooms. Approval for Project T5 came swiftly. Ford's board greenlit the concept, but the urgency was clear. The car had to be ready in under 2 years, a timeline almost unheard of for a major automaker. To build excitement, Iacocca's team turned to prototypes. The Mustang 1, revealed in 1962, was a radical mid-engine two-seater. It was more like a race car than a commuter car. It appeared at the Watkins Glen Grand Prix, drawing crowds and headlines, even though it was never destined for mass production. The Mustang 2 followed in 1963, with 4 seats and a more realistic shape. Ford paraded these concept cars across college campuses and racetracks, testing reactions and building anticipation before anyone outside the company knew what the final product would be. Inside Ford, the pressure mounted. The company's market research painted a clear picture. Baby boomers wanted style, speed, and a sense of freedom, but most had little cash to spare. The answer, Iacocca decided, was to build the new car on the bones of the existing Falcon, Ford's compact economy model. This shortcut would save millions in development costs and allow the company to hit the tight deadline. But it also meant the Mustang would inherit much of the Falcon's basic engineering, a fact kept quiet as the marketing machine roared to life. By early 1964, the pieces were in place. Ford's advertising agency, J. Walter Thompson, lined up a massive media blitz. The plan was to unveil the car at the New York World's Fair and to flood all 3 major TV networks with launch ads. The tagline was simple: "This is the car that dreams are made of." On April 17, 1964, Ford dealers across the country opened their doors to a tidal wave of customers. In Chicago, crowds were so thick that a dealer locked his showroom to prevent chaos. In Prescott, Arkansas, hundreds of high school students rioted for a glimpse of the new car. The Mustang's debut was an instant sensation, with 22,000 orders on the first day and more than 400,000 cars sold in its first year. Ford had delivered on Iacocca's vision, at least on the surface. But behind the scenes, the mechanical reality told a different story, one that would soon come into focus. From the outside, the Mustang looked like something fresh out of a designer's sketchbook, with a long hood, a short deck, and a badge that promised speed. But underneath, the story was far less glamorous. The car's foundation came straight from the Ford Falcon, a compact economy model introduced in 1960. Engineers reused the Falcon unibody chassis, the basic suspension, and even its 170 cubic inch 6-cylinder engine for the Mustang's base version. That meant leaf springs in the rear, a live axle, and drum brakes all around, technology that was already considered modest by the mid-1960s. The entry-level Mustang rolled off the line with just 101 horsepower, mated to a 3-speed manual transmission. 0 to 60 took over 15 seconds, and top speed barely touched 100 miles per hour. Yet the price tag started at $2,368, making it one of the most affordable new cars with such eye-catching style. Ford accountants and engineers worked closely to hold costs down, borrowing as many parts as possible from the Falcon parts bin. The result was a car that looked like a sports coupe but drove, in its most basic form, like an economy sedan. Road testers at the time noticed the connection. Motor Trend described the base Mustang as pleasant but not particularly quick, and Car and Driver pointed out that buyers expecting European-style handling would be disappointed unless they paid extra for the V8 and upgraded suspension. Still, the numbers worked in Ford's favor. By keeping the mechanicals simple and proven, the company could ramp up production quickly and avoid expensive retooling. Dealers could advertise a low sticker price, knowing that the real profit would come from the options list. Inside Ford, some engineers argued for a more sophisticated platform, but the deadline and the budget left little room for experiments. The Falcon design had already been tested, and its components were cheap to manufacture in massive quantities. The Mustang's steering, brakes, and axles all matched the Falcon's, and even the wheelbase, 108 inches, remained unchanged. Only the sheet metal and interior trim set the Mustang apart at first glance. Buyers drawn in by the car's aggressive looks often left the showroom with something far tamer than the racing machines featured in the ads. For many, the excitement faded once they turned the key and heard the quiet hum of a 6-cylinder engine. Yet the showroom traffic kept coming. Ford's gamble paid off. The company could deliver a car that looked fast, felt new, and cost less than a family vacation, all by recycling the bones of an economy car. The mechanical truth was hidden beneath the surface, where cost-saving decisions shaped every bolt and bracket. For the engineers, it was a practical victory. For the marketers, it created the perfect illusion, one that would soon be sold to millions. J. Walter Thompson, Ford's longtime ad agency, received their marching orders before a single Mustang rolled off the line. The brief was not about horsepower or handling. It was about selling a feeling. Inside JWT's New York offices, creative directors studied Ford's research on young buyers, then drafted a strategy that would shape the entire campaign. An internal memo preserved in the agency's archives called for a focus on glamour above all else. It said, "Go heavy on glamour photographs, soft pedal the performance and practicality angles, and shout about the unexpected low price." This was not a suggestion. It was a directive. The Mustang would be more than a car. It would be an invitation to a new lifestyle. JWT's team, led by seasoned executives and rising copywriters, pored over every detail, from the curve of the fender in a photograph to the exact shade of lipstick worn by the model leaning on the hood. The car's mechanical roots, borrowed from the Falcon, were barely mentioned. Instead, the campaign promised youth, romance, and freedom, all wrapped in chrome and bright paint. The agency's creative staff worked late into the night, storyboarding ads that placed the Mustang in the center of American dreams. One spread showed a convertible parked on a windswept beach, a young couple laughing in the surf. Another featured a fastback under city lights, suggesting midnight adventures. The copywriters crafted taglines that skipped technical jargon, choosing phrases like "dream your own Mustang" and "the car that dreams are made of." The word "dream" anchored many of the pieces. JWT's approach was surgical. They segmented the market, tailoring messages for every slice of the population. For thrifty young mothers, full-page magazine ads called the Mustang the sweetheart of the supermarket set, touting bucket seats and fuel economy. For singles, the message shifted to speed and style. For older buyers, a George Bernard Shaw quote ran above a photo of a silver-haired couple in a convertible, inviting everyone to buy into the dream. The campaign aimed to make desire, not specifications, the selling point. The plan called for saturation. Ford's launch would hit all three major TV networks in a single night, a so-called media roadblock, ensuring no one could ignore the Mustang's arrival. Magazine spreads, radio jingles, and showroom banners followed, each echoing JWT's core message. This was not just a car, it was a ticket to a better, more glamorous life. The agency's fingerprints touched every ad, every slogan, every glossy photograph. The intent was unmistakable. Shape perception first, and let the details sort themselves out later. On the evening of April 16, 1964, a new kind of media event unfolded in American living rooms. At exactly 9:30 p.m. Eastern, the Mustang appeared on all three major television networks, NBC, CBS, and ABC, at the same moment. This was no accident. Ford's ad agency, J. Walter Thompson, had purchased a rare media roadblock, blanketing the airwaves with the Mustang's debut commercial. For a few minutes, the car was inescapable, whether families were watching Hazel, Perry Mason, or The Jimmy Dean Show. The numbers left no doubt about the scale. Nielsen ratings from that night recorded 29 million viewers tuning in for the Mustang's first appearance. That is nearly 1 out of every 6 Americans at the time. In 1964, the average household owned a single television, and prime time meant families gathered together. Ford's message did not just reach car enthusiasts or city dwellers, it landed in farmhouses, suburbs, and small towns from coast to coast. Network archives show that the Mustang ad played more than 100 times in its first week, saturating every available slot. Radio spots echoed the campaign, filling the airwaves with the same promise of youth and freedom. Print ads soon followed, but the television blitz set the tone. Dealers reported customers arriving the next morning, some clutching newspaper clippings, others describing the car they had seen on television the night before. Ford's planners measured success not just in sales, but in cultural footprint. The Mustang became a national talking point overnight, discussed at breakfast tables and water coolers. The scale of the launch dwarfed typical car rollouts, and the 29 million viewer figure became a benchmark in automotive marketing. No American car had ever been introduced with such a coordinated, all-encompassing broadcast. This saturation did not just sell cars, it sold the idea of the Mustang as a symbol. The sheer reach of the campaign ensured the car would echo through pop culture, from radio hits to high school parking lots. For Ford's media planners, the strategy worked exactly as intended. The Mustang was no longer just a new model. It was an instant icon, embedded in the minds of an entire generation before most had even seen one in person. Hollywood's spotlight did more than just shine on the Mustang, it magnified its myth until the line between reality and fantasy blurred. In 1968, Steve McQueen's film Bullitt hit theaters, and with it one Highland Green Mustang 390 GT Fastback burned itself into the American consciousness. The car's 7-minute chase through the hills of San Francisco turned the Mustang from a stylish commuter into a symbol of raw, cinematic cool. McQueen's GT was not the base 6-cylinder found in most driveways. Under the hood sat 325 horsepower V8, a machine built for the screen. But the Mustang's real genius lay in how this moment played out far beyond the movie theater. Studio records show that Ford's public relations team worked closely with Warner Brothers to clear the use of the Mustang and Bullitt. Internal notes from Ford's communications office highlight the strategic value. Every frame of McQueen behind the wheel doubled as an unpaid commercial. The film's release sent demand for fastbacks and GT packages soaring, even as most buyers still left the lot with underpinnings derived from the Falcon. The Mustang's cameo in Bullitt was not an accident. It was a calculated play that paid off in both cultural cachet and dealer profits. The effect rippled out through magazines, radio, and television. Lifestyle photo shoots placed Mustangs atop Malibu cliffs, outside jazz clubs, and in the hands of models who looked nothing like the average car buyer. Ford's marketing department tracked these placements, noting a spike in showroom interest after every high-profile appearance. The car became shorthand for youth and rebellion, regardless of what was actually under the hood. For many, owning a Mustang meant stepping into a ready-made movie scene, a feeling that could not be matched by a spec sheet or a test drive. This feedback loop between pop culture and sales created a self-fulfilling prophecy. Dealers reported that buyers, especially younger ones, asked for the Bullitt Mustang by name. Ford's internal sales ledgers from the late 1960s confirmed that GT and fastback models outsold the base coupe in the months following the film's release, even though the vast majority still opted for the less expensive versions based on the Falcon. The Mustang's image, propped up by film and fashion, became more valuable than any single feature or engine option. Ford's accountants watched the profits climb, knowing that every movie cameo and magazine spread translated into real dollars at the dealership. The Mustang was not just a car, it was a pop icon, carefully maintained and amplified by every screen it appeared on. Sales figures from Ford's ledgers told their own story. In just 12 months, from April 1964 to April 1965, 418,812 Mustangs left dealership lots, a number that stunned even the most optimistic executives. The scale was unprecedented. No American car had ever sold so quickly out of the gate. But the real engine behind these numbers was not just the car's price or its looks. It was the way Ford structured the sale itself, turning every showroom into a finely tuned upsell machine. The Mustang's advertised price, $2,368, was a starting line, not a finish. Dealers knew that almost nobody left with a base model. Once a customer walked through the door, sales staff guided them through a menu of upgrades and options. There were 3 V8 engines to choose from, automatic or manual transmissions, GT appearance packages, vinyl roofs, radios, white wall tires, and air conditioning. Each choice added to the bottom line. The options list was so extensive that Ford's own historian John Clore later said that no two cars would be exactly alike. This was not accidental. Ford's internal sales training materials, distributed to dealerships nationwide, outlined step-by-step tactics for maximizing each transaction. Salespeople were instructed to start with the base car and then walk buyers through the possibilities: first appearance, then performance, then comfort and convenience. The more a buyer imagined their Mustang as unique, the more likely they were to tick boxes on the order form. The company tracked these upsells closely, and the data was clear. Roughly 80% of buyers added at least one major option, with many loading their cars far beyond the base price. Bundling played a key role. Ford introduced option packages that grouped popular features together at a slight discount, making it easier for buyers to justify spending more. The GT Equipment Group, for example, bundled a V8 engine, fog lights, dual exhaust, and special badging. The Interior Decor Group added wood grain trim, deluxe door panels, and a 5-dial instrument cluster. These bundles made the Mustang feel more like a luxury or performance car, even as its mechanical foundation remained unchanged. The financial impact was enormous. Ford's ledgers for the first year show that the average Mustang sold for well above the advertised price, often closer to $3,000 or more once options were included. This strategy did not just boost profits for Ford, it turned dealerships into profit centers as well. Salesmen received commissions tied to upsells, and high-performing stores competed for regional awards. Internal reports highlighted the option profit analysis, showing that accessories and upgrades accounted for a significant share of the Mustang's total revenue. The volume of sales and the effectiveness of the upsell strategy rippled through the entire automotive market. Ford's approach became a new standard, studied by competitors and business schools alike. By the end of 1965, the Mustang was not just a sales success, it was a textbook case in how to turn aspiration into dollars, one option at a time. For a generation coming of age in the mid-1960s, The Mustang was not just a car, it was a rite of passage. In suburbs from California to New Jersey, teenagers counted down the days until they could get their license, dreaming of the keys to a Mustang. High school yearbooks from 1965 are filled with photos of students leaning against their new coupes, hair swept back, sunglasses on, arms draped over the driver's door. For many, the car meant more than transportation. It was a ticket into social circles, a badge that said you belonged. Oral histories collected by classic car clubs tell the same story again and again. Some buyers were barely out of college, scraping together a down payment from summer jobs or borrowed cash. Others were young professionals, eager to trade in their parents' sedans for something that promised excitement. The Mustang style offered instant status. Owners recall how classmates would gather in parking lots just to look, how a convertible could turn a Friday night into an event. One early owner remembered that driving a Mustang made you feel like the main character in your own movie. But the glow did not always last. Within a year or two, stories of disappointment began to circulate. Letters to car magazines and club newsletters mentioned doors that rattled, dashboards that warped in the sun, and fenders that showed rust after a single winter. For some, the reality of the Falcon-based mechanics crept in slowly. Sluggish acceleration, drum brakes that faded on long descents, a ride that felt stiff over rough pavement. Yet few were willing to admit it openly. The car's image was powerful enough to paper over most complaints, at least at first. The Mustang pull was not limited to teenagers. Oral history interviews from the Henry Ford Museum include stories from young mothers who bought the 6-cylinder version, drawn by ads promising both style and practicality. Some remember feeling proud to park a Mustang at the supermarket, while others recall the frustration when their Sweet Six developed leaks or needed frequent repairs. In club meetings and reunion picnics, the talk often turns to memories of first dates, cross-country trips, and the feeling of freedom, followed sometimes by a quiet admission that the car did not live up to the legend in every way. A sense of community grew around the Mustang almost overnight. Local clubs formed, with members swapping stories, trading parts, and comparing custom touches. For many, the car became part of their identity, something to be polished on weekends and shown off at parades. Decades later, some owners still keep faded Polaroids of their first Mustang in a drawer, alongside notes about repairs and upgrades. The memories are complicated, pride, nostalgia, and for some, a lingering sense of having bought into a promise that was not entirely real. Yet the Mustang's place in their lives remains an emblem of youth and the power of a well-crafted dream. The Mustang's runaway success didn't just fill Ford's order books, it sent a shockwave through Detroit. Within months of the Mustang's debut, industry analysts coined a new term, the pony car. The idea was simple but powerful, a sporty, affordable coupe with a long hood, short deck, and a price tag within reach of young buyers. The Mustang defined the category, but Ford's rivals were not about to let the company dominate this new market unchallenged. General Motors moved quickly. Internal GM documents show that by late 1964, Chevrolet engineers had begun sketching their own response. The result arrived in the fall of 1966, the Chevrolet Camaro. Revealed to the press on September 29, 1966, the Camaro was aimed squarely at the Mustang's heart. It offered a similar blend of style, customization, and accessible pricing. The timing was no accident. GM leadership made it clear that the Camaro existed for one reason: to win back the buyers Ford had captured. Industry journals from the period described the launch as an escalation. The so-called pony car wars had begun, with the Mustang and the Camaro battling for the attention of a generation raised on television and advertising. Ford's marketing playbook, heavy on image and light on mechanical detail, became the template for the entire segment. The arrival of the Camaro set off a chain reaction, prompting Mercury, AMC, and even Chrysler to scramble their own entries. The Mustang had not just sold cars, it had created a new kind of car altogether, and a new era in American automotive competition. Other automakers wasted no time studying Ford's playbook. The Mustang's runaway popularity didn't just create a new segment, it gave birth to a new kind of marketing. Car companies across Detroit and beyond began to treat cars as canvases for lifestyle, not just machines. Ad agencies shifted their approach, borrowing heavily from the Mustang's formula. The focus was no longer on horsepower charts or technical diagrams, but on the image projected behind the wheel. Industry analysts in the late 1960s noted the sudden wave of copycat campaigns. Chevrolet's Camaro, Pontiac's Firebird, and AMC's Javelin all arrived with ads that promised excitement, freedom, and youth. The template was clear. Show a car in motion, surround it with beautiful people, and let the viewer imagine themselves in the scene. Ford's own internal reviews from 1966 confirmed that rivals were selling the sizzle, not the steak, a phrase that soon became gospel in marketing circles. By the end of the decade, the Mustang strategy had become the industry standard. Market historians point to this era as the turning point when American car advertising shifted for good. The product was still important, but the lifestyle it promised became the real engine of sales. The Mustang's legacy wasn't just a new category of car, it was a new way of selling dreams, one that would shape the auto industry for generations to come. Inside the archives of Ford, J. Walter Thompson, and automotive history collections, the paper trail behind the Mustang's rise is both vast and revealing. Original 1964 television commercials preserved by Kingro's archives and noted in Ford's own promotional records show the car's launch at the New York World's Fair, where the Mustang first appeared to millions. Print advertisements from magazines like Motor Trend and Life, stored in the Benson Ford Research Center, highlight the shift in messaging, glamour shots, sweeping taglines, and carefully staged scenes promising youth and romance. Internal marketing documents, including memos from JWT's New York offices, outline the strategy to spotlight style and price, while downplaying the Falcon roots and mechanical details. Sales ledgers from Ford's first year, cataloged by the company's own record keepers, detail the staggering 418,812 units sold between April 1964 and April 1965. These ledgers not only track volume, but reveal the upsell patterns, how buyers moved from the base model to pricier, option-laden versions. Together, these sources form a map of the evidence, the commercials that set the tone, the print ads that sold the dream, the memos that crafted the message, and the ledgers that captured the results. This archival foundation ensures that every claim about the Mustang's image, marketing, and sales is grounded in original material, ready for expert analysis and first-hand testimony. To ground the story in lived experience and expert knowledge, a range of voices will be brought in. John Clore, an automotive historian with decades of research on Ford's archives, offers perspective on how the Mustang's image eclipsed its engineering. He is joined by a former J. Walter Thompson marketer who worked on the original campaign, recalling the agency's focus on lifestyle and aspiration over technical detail. From the engineering side, a veteran Ford chassis engineer who contributed to the Mustang's adaptation from the Falcon platform explains the compromises made to meet cost and timing demands. Their accounts are balanced by testimony from 3 original owners, each with their own story. One, a retired teacher, describes the excitement of buying a Mustang at age 22, only to discover the base model's modest performance. Another, a former dealership salesman, remembers the rush of the launch and the tactics used to steer buyers toward pricier options. The third, a classic car club member, reflects on the pride and frustration that came with Mustang ownership in the late 1960s. Together, these interviews provide first-hand evidence of how the car's promise was sold, experienced, and remembered by those who shaped and were shaped by the Mustang phenomenon. Today, lifestyle marketing dominates every screen, selling dreams over substance, just as it did in 1964. Ford proved that image can outdrive engineering, an insight still fueling billion-dollar campaigns across industries. As consumers chase identity through products, the line between aspiration and illusion blurs further. The Mustang's legacy isn't just on the road, it is in every promise packaged and sold. The real engine was never horsepower, it was desire. What do you think? Are we still buying the fantasy?